You're aimlessly browsing the shortwave radio spectrum when you come across a rather unusual broadcast. A voice, repeating a series of numbers. To the unweary listener, these numbers come across as senseless or pointless meandering, but these types of broadcasts are known as the infamous number stations. In this video, I'll be going over a brief history of number stations and some of the stations themselves. There will be a lot of speculation, and I'll even show you how to encrypt your own message in the way we think these number stations do. This video was inspired in part by Lemino, a user who produces videos of a similar mysteries or phenomena, and I'd be interested in hearing what he has to say about the topic of number stations. To summarize, a number station is a radio station on the shortwave band that broadcasts strings of numbers accompanied by other unusual sounds or strings of music. Number stations may send out numbers through either voice or Morse code, and they may also send out strings of letters rather than numbers. Also often called number stations but technically aren't, are other unusual broadcasts that may include polytones or data bursts. While these data bursts or polytones or other strange broadcasts aren't technically number stations, I'll still go over some of them in this video. In short, we don't know 100% what number stations are for. There's a lot of speculation from drug cartels to covert government activity or even aliens, but the most generally accepted idea is that they're used by governments or government organizations to send messages to spies abroad. No government or organization has ever admitted to owning or operating them, and there's only one case where a number station has been publicly accused of transmitting to spies, which I'll get into later on in the video. The history of number stations seems to be rather muddied at best. Some sources claim that they first appeared around World War I, where they originally broadcast in Morse code. If this is true, that would make number stations among the first radio broadcasts, but other sources claim that they surfaced around and were used during World War II, and much of what we know about number stations dates back to the Cold War era that started in the late 1940s and ended in the early 1990s. Number stations were most common during this time period, and while they still exist today, they're nowhere near as common as they were during the Cold War. The Cold War was a period of tense peace, primarily between the United States and the Soviet Union. The Cold War stemmed from the Americans' distrust of the Soviet communism and the Soviets' Eastern European expansion, which made some believe that the Soviet Union planned on controlling the world. On the other side, the Soviet Union distrusted American officials' rhetoric, building up of military strength, and tendency to intervene in international politics. This is the primary reason for the arms race that occurred during this time period, as each nation tried to one-up the other. The Soviet Union tested their first atomic bomb in 1949 and prompted the United States to build a bomb even bigger and better. The threat of global atomic annihilation increased with the production of bigger and more destructive bombs. The Soviet Union eventually produced the largest nuclear bomb ever tested, which was tested on October the 30th of 1961. This horrifying weapon, nicknamed the Tsar Bomba, had an explosive yield of over 50 megatons and was designed to support up to 100 megatons. The mushroom cloud reached a height of 64 kilometers or 40 miles, and the blast was so big that the flash of light and the fireball could be seen up to 1,000 kilometers or 621 miles away, and windows were broken up to 900 kilometers or 560 miles away. The mushroom cloud was visible well over 500 kilometers away, or 200 miles, and the shockwave and seismicity circled the Earth a few times. This frightening bomb was designed to be twice as powerful as it really was. Such a horrifyingly real threat was a good reason countries may have wanted to spy on one another, especially during the Cold War, when tensions were at their highest. But since the Cold War has ended, the number of active number stations has decreased rather dramatically. While they still exist, their numbers are far fewer than they were before, though some stations still persist. But with modern communication methods such as text messaging on smartphone and internet communications, why are number stations still being used? Radio technology by all means is old, outdated, and unreliable compared to modern methods of communications. It's well over 100 years old, with the first radio broadcast occurring in 1906. The problem with communicating over the internet or using mobile phones is that they're easily traced. It's not hard for a motivated government or even an individual to trace phone calls, emails, text messages, or internet browsing history. The beauty of communicating over shortwave radio is that while triangulating the source of these radio broadcasts usually isn't difficult, the intended recipient is untraceable. All a spy would have to do is set up a civilian-grade shortwave radio, sit in a basement somewhere and tune to the station. The messages can't be tracked, and neither can any of the listeners. A police force would need more evidence to convict someone of spying than merely finding seemingly harmless radios. This is the advantage that these old shortwave stations have over modern technology. The recipients and the messages are virtually untraceable, and with the transmitter being located in another country, a spied-on country may have to risk invasion or full-on war if they so desperately want to shut it down. Furthermore, the one-time pad method of message encryption we think these number stations use is unbreakable, provided that it's used correctly. The idea of a one-time pad is that an encrypted message has a key the same length as the message. The key uses entirely random characters, there are only 2 copies of the pad in existence, it's used only once, and both copies are destroyed after use. While I'll show you how to use a one-time pad, cryptomuseum.com has an interesting article on the one-time pad that I would suggest you take a look at. You'll find the link in the sources and citations section of the description. From around 1976 to 1989, the Soviet Union operated an over-the-horizon radar system known as the Duga-3. Once operated nearby the towns of Pripyat and Chernobyl in the Ukraine, the Duga-3's purpose was to detect incoming missile attacks specifically from the United States. It was an extremely powerful radar system that broadcast pulses over the shortwave band to detect inconsistencies in the Earth's ionosphere, inconsistencies that may very well indicate a missile launch. Such a powerful radar system required a lot of power, and its signals could be heard on shortwave radio stations all across the world. It sounded like a quick, repetitive tapping, earning the nickname the Russian woodpecker. This sound interrupted legitimate radio broadcasts all around the world, and many people incorrectly speculated that it may be another spy station, though I suppose you could technically shoehorn it into the category of spy stuff, because it was meant to detect incoming nuclear missiles from very far away. Digression aside, we're really not 100% sure what number stations are used for because no one has ever actually admitted to operating them, but the most commonly accepted idea is that they're used to send encrypted messages to spies abroad. Others think that some stations may be used by drug cartels or other illicit activities. There is one publicized incident where people were accused of using a Cuban number station to spy on the United States. The Cuban Atención number station was the first time in history that one of these enigmatic stations was officially and publicly accused of transmitting messages to spies, with a court case to follow around 1998. LiquidSearch.com states that during the court case, the FBI testified that they copied a computer decryption program from one of the spies' apartments and used it to decode encrypted messages, which were later revealed in court. The spies themselves were accused of using these decryption programs to decode messages received from the Atención number station using Sony shortwave radios. It is possible that I'm mistaken, but I think that this is the first time in history that the messages from a number station were publicly revealed. The court case revealed 3 decrypted messages. The first instructing message recipients to strengthen friendships with Joe and Dennis, possibly in an effort to have them reveal classified information. The second message prohibits German and Castor, I presume to be 2 individuals or groups, from flying with BTTR or any other organizations on days 24, 25, 26, and 27. In this case, the BTTR is referencing Brothers to the Rescue, which is an anti-Castro airborne organization. The final revealed message instructs recipients to congratulate all female comrades for the International Day of the Woman, a simple greeting for International Women's Day. It is most often suggested that the numbers or letters recited in a number station broadcast are encrypted using a method known as the one-time pad. The article on the Atención spy case didn't explicitly indicate whether or not that this is the method used for the messages, but it implies that it is. If this encryption method is used correctly, the message cannot be decrypted by an outside source. A spy would be given a decryption key that is used to decrypt the message, and then the key is destroyed. I would presume that this method requires that the messages be thought out prior to the spy's deployment, because sending the key to the spy would pose risk of enemy decryption. The most common message format used by number stations includes the prelude, the message itself, which is usually in the form of 4 or 5-digit groups, and then the closing. The prelude usually consists of a station identifier, the intended recipient, the priority of the message and which key to use, while the closing is often some form of end in one language or another. One of the best-known stations was the Lincolnshire Poacher Station. This station possibly existed before the 1970s and is no longer active as of 2008. The Lincolnshire Poacher was originally thought to have been transmitted out of Egypt, but it is now believed to have been transmitted from Akrotiri in Cyprus, and was likely operated by the British Secret Intelligence Service. Even though this is one of the best documented and most well-known stations, its exact purpose is still not known, and as is the case with every other number station we know of.
39715. 39715. 39715. 397.
The Lincolnshire Poacher embodies the format most commonly used in number station broadcasts. Preceding a message is 2 bars of the English folk song of the same name. Then, a single 5-digit group of numbers repeated 10 times. Then, 6 chimes, and then the message follows. 200 groups consisting of 5 digits each. Each group is repeated, presumably to make sure the recipient does not miss any. Like virtually every station, we don't know exactly what the Lincolnshire Poacher number station was used for. I tried to find out where the station signals were directed, and from that, I may have been able to estimate what the station could have been for, by figuring out which countries in its signal path had significant developments going on, or by figuring out what may have ended in 2008 when the station went offline. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem that any website knows where the Lincolnshire Poacher signals were directed. Perhaps my favorite number station is the long-defunct Gongs and Chimes station. I think that the reason I consider it to be my favorite is because I find it so creepy and weird, yet intriguing at the same time. This station derives its nickname from the eerie chimes that play before a message. This Gongs and Chimes station was transmitted from Gießen in Germany and controlled from Warnsdorf. Operated by the East German National People's Army, it was last heard in May of 1990, shortly before the unification of Germany. It followed a message format similar to that of the Lincolnshire Poacher. Unfortunately, information on this particular station is extremely sparse. I could hardly find anything at all, and everything that I did find was not particularly noteworthy. I have no idea what the sound of the gongs and chimes could be. It sounds like gongs or bells, but synthesized, not really real at all. They're almost musical, but not anyone's idea of music, and rather hard to listen to. As a matter of fact, they're quite atonal. And, like the other stations, I have no idea what its specific purpose was, but it was likely used to send messages to agents in West Germany. Over the sound of the chimes and the voices, you can hear what sounds like radio teletype. You can best hear this sound after the chimes stop and just before the voice begins. I wondered if maybe it was a part of the Gongs and Chimes station, or if it was interruption from some other station, and I was even more curious to know if it was real radio teletype, so I took a recording and ran it through a program called FL Digi, and this is what I got. A whole lot of nothing. As I moved the tuner around the spectrum, I got different patterns. I suppose it's possible that it means something, but I think it's more likely that it's just some interference that produced the radio teletype-like sounds, which is where this mess came from. Or maybe it's real and I just haven't interpreted it correctly, or I've actually uncovered parts of a code. I don't know for certain. I wouldn't mind hearing what you would have to say about it in the comment section down below. A big deviation from this format is one of the more famous Russian stations, commonly known as UVB-76, but more recently known as MDZHB and later ZHUOZ, which are speculated to be the station's call signs. UVB-76 technically isn't a number station, as UVB-76 doesn't use the standard 4 or 5 digit number group format. Instead, it uses a technique known as monolith messages. It is usually set up with the call sign, 2 groups of 2 or 3 digit numbers, the code word in phonetic alphabet form, and several more 2-digit number groups, and this is what it sounds like.
Татьяна, Иван, человек, Николай.
There's a lot of speculation surrounding the UVB-76 station, and the most commonly accepted idea is that it's a relic of the Cold War and is a part of the Russian dead hand system, which itself is a part of a concept of mutually assured destruction. The idea basically says that if you kill me, I will kill you. While that one can say that mutually assured destruction is still a thing today, it was most feared during the Cold War, with the threat of global thermonuclear war being much higher. Something that so far has been a work of fiction, and let's hope it stays that way. I really enjoy playing Fallout 3, New Vegas, and 4, but I don't want that sort of thing to become a reality. Digression aside, it is thought that UVB-76 is a part of Russia's dead hand system. Also known as Perimeter, the dead hand system is an automatic missile control system with around 250 nuclear warheads at its disposal. In other words, that means there are 250 nuclear warheads ready to be fired at a moment's notice in retaliation, all automatically, even if all the command personnel are wiped out. The USSR dead hand system was put into place in 1985, just 2 years after UVB-76 was first identified by outside observers. It is thought to work as a basic form of artificial intelligence that monitors information received from satellites, seismic activity, radiation sensors, and radar stations. This means that the Duga 3 radar array could have been a part of this dead hand system, but I really doubt it, as the Duga 3's signals became less frequent throughout the 1980s until they completely disappeared in 1989, when it was shut down for unknown reasons. This dead hand system was very much real and is still in operation today, though it is normally switched off and supposed to only be enabled in times of crisis. If it detects any seismic, radar, light, radioactive, and overpressure anomalies, it will automatically launch Russian nuclear ICBMs. As UVB-76 is thought to be a part of this dead hand system, it is speculated that the station's activity levels will skyrocket, issuing messages to military personnel. A highly unlikely idea is that it is a dead hand switch, where if it stops broadcasting, it will activate a nuclear attack response. This is extremely unlikely. UVB-76 is most likely used for coded military communications intended for within Russia. Of course, this is nothing more than pure speculation. We don't know for certain what UVB-76's purpose really is. It was first noticed by outside observers in 1982 and may have existed since the late 1970s. Prior to 2010, there were only a few known voice messages, and the first voice message was observed in 1997, 15 years after the station was first noticed. It is also interesting to note that the station continued to exist unhindered even after the USSR dissolved and can still be listened to this very day. Also, unlike other number stations, the voice messages seem to be read out in real time, whereas other stations use synthesized voices. Due to UVB-76's popularity, a lot of the station's more anomalous behavior has been noted. There are numerous recordings online of the station broadcasting phone calls accidentally picked up by the system and distant conversations, which suggests that the constant buzzing noise is being made by a device placed behind an always open microphone. There's even an audio recording of the station broadcasting a clip of Swan Lake, a ballet composed by Pyotr Tchaikovsky. UVB-76's current location has been more difficult to find, as enthusiasts have triangulated multiple locations, but we do know its location before its move in 2010. It used to broadcast out of a military base at Povarovo, which is not that far from Moscow. In 2011, the abandoned base was explored by curious individuals who described the location as a typical Russian military base. The explorers described the base as having a large underground portion to complement the normal above-ground buildings, with a lot of the rooms underground extending past the base of the buildings. Aside from finding a lot of unimportant papers, broken electronics, some furniture, and a vile chemical smell in one of the dark underground rooms that forced the explorers to leave the area, they found few noteworthy items, except for a logbook. This logbook confirms that UVB-76 used to broadcast at this location. It was labeled as sample and was likely used as a template for filling out future logbooks, but it did confirm that UVB-76 broadcast out of the Povarovo location. Currently, it seems to broadcast out of two different locations, one at St. Petersburg and the other at Narofominsk. Another example of a non-conventional station is the Yosemite Sam Station. It's technically not a number station, but since it's a similarly mysterious station that people speculate to send coded messages, it's often thrown into the group of number stations. The broadcast format is very different from typical number stations, as it begins with a data burst transmission lasting for 0.8 seconds, followed by an audio clip from the Bugs Bunny episode. The transmission is then repeated 10 seconds later on its next higher frequency. Of course, I have not been able to find any potential decryptions of this transmission. The source of the Yosemite Sam broadcast was supposedly located by two individuals. This claim suggests that the location was at the Maddox Center in Laguna, New Mexico, in the United States. Sadly, it doesn't seem that I am able to find any images of this location. These individuals, upon approaching the location, were ordered to leave and the radio station seemed to go off the air. Again, one of the more unconventional and rather chilling stations is the station known as the Backwards Music Station, which counterintuitively does not actually play backwards music. Interesting if it did. This station sounds like really bad feedback noises with occasional bits of what sounds like garbled voices. The sounds can be heard on many frequencies all around the world, but it's not common at all to be able to hear them as the signals are extremely elusive. It is widely speculated that, while these signals sound like severe radio interference, that they're actually a form of unresolvable communication, being a form of encrypted or scrambled voice messages. According to one of my sources whose web URL is in the description, it's rogers.dsl.pipix.com, it specializes in articles on mysterious signals of the shortwave, there appear to be two sources of these signals. The signals broadcast close to naval frequencies and are supposedly originating from U.S. naval bases in Jacksonville, Florida and Virginia Beach, and may be strung all across the North American continent. The source goes on to say that some of the signals are also heard well in Europe, but are weak in North America. It suggests that a potential origin of the European backwards music signals is in Sicily, in Italy. Like I said, it was speculated to be a form of communication, but was also speculated to be a form of linkimpex, or linear compression and expansion. This is another form of communication used by commercial and defense organizations, but the article that I'm sourcing from states that one of the contributors thinks that the backwards music station is unlikely to have anything to do with linkimpex. The article on this site puts forth a very possible idea, and I quote, "Another correspondent had previously told me that he believes these signals to be nothing more than groups of military or government transmitter backup networks that are kept serviceable in case the main communication systems fail or are destroyed. Every so often, they are powered up and kept running for several days to ensure that they are in working order. The sounds that we hear are feedback noise caused by the transmitters picking up the output from their own or other links in the chain. Once the testing is over, the backup systems are then shut down until the next tests are carried out, thus explaining the intermittent and rare nature of the signals." This isn't a direct quote from the author of the article, but rather a contributor to the article that I am sourcing from. Nonetheless, I still think it's a good, very possible explanation, but again, there's still no solid evidence indicating what the backwards music station signals really are, though I think that this is the most likely reason for their existence. Lastly, I wanted to touch on another broadcast that isn't a number station but is still no less mysterious and rather creepy. To be entirely honest, this one kept me up one night, unable to sleep. I don't know why I find this particular broadcast so nightmare-inducing, but why don't you take a listen and see what you think for yourself? This particular broadcast is called the Exotic Cipher and is included on Disc 5 of the Conet project, which you can, interestingly enough, find on iTunes. This broadcast was recorded on October the 5th of 2008 and was heard on the 6.215 kHz band. It's a really interesting sound. To me it sounds like the wooden xylophone sounds and is almost musical, but not quite. Again, like the Gongs and Chimes station, is rather atonal. The name implies that this sound is some form of ciphered message, but I've never heard anything like it before, and like I said, there was no information that I could find online. So, I posted a question to Reddit, and so far I've gotten a few responses. One user had the idea of encrypting messages into musical tones, while another notes how much more different it is from other utility tones. But Reddit user Sauce on the Brain pointed me to a stub page on SIG-ID Wiki that talks about the signal. The Signal Identification Wiki notes that it is a form of polytone data transmission. As far as I can tell, polytone broadcasts over the shortwave are a form of encrypted messages or data transmissions that use a series of tones that vary in pitch and speed. But for the most part, they seem to sound like regular electronic beeps or pure tones. But as the SIG-ID Wiki goes on to say, this quote-unquote exotic cipher is different. It doesn't have a bass carrier tone, which is a longer, steadier tone that usually precedes a broadcast. The transmission also carried on for many hours, where typical polytone broadcasts are short. There's a program called Rivet that can decode these polytone broadcasts, and when decoded, they usually reveal a series of numbers, much like a number station, but I didn't seem to have any luck with this program myself. Furthermore, because of the exotic cipher's unusual sound, it might be hard to decode with this program as well. If you're interested in downloading Rivet and decoding polytones for yourself, search for Rivet Decoder on Google. Regardless, whatever messages or information these polytone broadcasts are broadcasting, they're virtually unbreakable. Also, I was fooling around with an online shortwave radio receiver, and I did find quite a few polytone broadcasts, though of course I don't know their broadcast location, as it's an online service that could have reception all around the world. The basic one-time pad message format we're most familiar is rather simple to use. For the sake of example, let's pretend that I want my message to say, "Hello, YouTube." What I would do is count each letter in the alphabet to find out its position in the alphabet. That would mean that H is the 8th letter in the alphabet, E is the 5th, L is 12th, and so on. We'll convert the entire message into the letter's alphabetical position, which makes it 8, 5, 12, 12, 15, 25, 15, 21, 20, 21, 2, and 5. I suppose it's entirely possible that I counted wrong, but let's move on. Now, we want to make a key that's exactly the same length as our message, but not counting spaces. What I would do is pick any random letters, so in this example, I'm going to choose XVAEDPWUEDUB. Again, doing the same thing as last time, I'll figure out the letters' alphabetical positions. 24, 22, 1, 5, 4, 16, 23, 21, 5, 4, 21, and 2. Now, we just use some simple math. What we want to do here is add the numbers from each message to each other, then subtract 1 from each. 8 plus 24 minus 1 equals 31. 5 plus 22 minus 1 equals 26, and so on and so forth. Here is my completed math. 31, 26, 12, 16, 18, 40, 37, 41, 24, 24, 22, and 6. Now, for any number that's higher than 26, we'll subtract 26 from it. In my example, there are 4 numbers higher than 26, so 31 minus 26 equals 5, 40 minus 26 equals 14, 37 minus 26 equals 11, and 41 minus 26 equals 15. Our final message is as follows: 5, 26, 12, 16, 18, 14, 11, 15, 24, 24, and 22, and 6. As most number stations follow either a 4 or 5 number grouping technique, our final encryption would look like this: 5261, 2161, 8141, 1152, 4242, 26. Decryption works in the opposite manner, using subtraction rather than addition. So, as you can see, a one-time pad using this method of encryption is rather simple, but quite effective. It's time-consuming to manually decode each time, so spies are likely to use computer decryptors now, using both the key and the message to decrypt it. I suppose the reason messages are divided into 4 or 5-digit groups is to obscure the number of letters and their placement in the message. It makes the groups indistinguishable from randomly generated numbers, and to unsuspecting civilians it would be meaningless. Of course, for spies, governments, and number station junkies such as myself, we know that it's a coded message, we just have no hope of decrypting them without those all-important keys. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch it. If you like it, you can leave a like, but if you didn't like it, well, there's always that dislike button. If you like my videos, then you can hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for future content, and provided you did so, we'll see you next time.